Hello, and welcome to my core milestone experience project, a Nazareth University capstone requirement in which each student integrates the learning from three upper division, seemingly unrelated courses to form a messy question and attempt to explore that question through a number of different avenues or strategies. My name is Rachel George, and I am a music therapy student at Nazareth University. Throughout my life, I have always found a sense of comfort and home when I am within my musical communities, whether it be performing for fun around the school day before Christmas break in middle school, having lunch in the band room in high school, or fostering those close relationships and friendships and lasting memories with fellow band members and music therapy classmates at NAS. Music has always felt like home. So, this is why it makes sense that I chose an enduring question that relates so closely to my passions in life. My enduring question is, how do music and gender identity intersect? I formed this question based on three main pillars. First, my interests. As I mentioned, music is my main passion in life. However, I did not mention that I also have earned a psychology minor. This question is absolutely influenced by my learnings throughout my psychology coursework, specifically psychology of gender. Second is my curiosity. I personally do not think there is a way to separate your gender identity from any aspect of your life. I believe it's a factor that impacts several day-to-day experiences, whether we realize it consciously or not. And then third is the relevance to my future. After I graduate from NAS, I will be heading into a multi-month internship, likely 8 to 10 months long. And then I will be taking the board certification exam to become a music therapist. My end goal is to work within the special education setting, and I will be interacting with other people on a daily basis through music interventions, songwriting, improvisation, and music listening. Now, it can only help me to consider the elements of a person's identity that can contribute to their music preferences, especially if I'm working with individuals who cannot communicate their wants, needs, or preferences. So, as I mentioned before, I integrated the course content from three classes that I have taken during my time at NAS. First was Psychology of Music. This class gave me the basis to combine music and psychology into an enduring question. Second was Psychology of Gender. This narrowed down my view and helped me more specifically look at an individual's identity, specifically gender. And then third is Race Records. Race Records was a semester-long exploration of the intersection of Black identity and music. This course specifically gave me the perspective that identity influences musical traditions, adjacent cultures, and ultimately musical preferences and gravitation. It also gave me the idea to look at the intersection of music with other elements of your identity rather than just your gender. So, my survey contained a total of 8 questions. It was a mix of short answer and multiple choice questions. I made this survey open to the public so anyone could take it that eventually got access to the link. My first step was to forward it to the entire School of Music body at Nazareth University. Then I posted the link to the survey on my personal and French horn performance Instagram pages, and I also posted it to my Facebook. From there, two of my family members and one of my professors forwarded the original post. Thankfully, it reached a very large audience, and we got a total of 119 um, survey respondents, which is incredible. I'm so thankful that so many people filled out my survey. I got a large diversity in terms of age range. I got responses from 17-year-olds to 85-year-old. The gender representation was a bit less diverse, with 70% of respondents identifying as female, 19% as male, 6% non-binary, 2% transgender, 2% genderqueer, and 1% as other. So let's start getting into the results. First, I was curious if there were any correlations between one's gender identity and the gender identities of their preferred music artists. So I asked the participants, um, which gender do you listen to most frequently? And after looking at the responses, kind of sorting through it, I found that 72% responded with the music artist's gender that matched their own. So, for example, a female said they listen to female and male most frequently, but because female was included, I included them in that 72%. So then 28% did not respond with the same gender that matched their own. So, for example, they may have said, I'm a male, but I only listen to female artists or something like that. I listen to female artists most frequently. Next up, I asked, do you feel your gender identity impacts your musical preferences? I was surprised by the results because 62% of people said no, and only 34% of people said yes, whereas 4% said they were unsure. Looking at some themes here that came up, when people said no, when they had the chance to explain, they said it was more about the elements of music, such as the beat, groove, or lyrical content of the music that draws them to it, rather than the gender of the artist. And then relating to the experience of their preferred artist was another theme. So, for example, they said that the gender or sexuality of the artist draw them to the artist. And then finally, some drew connections to the result of their upbringing or their parents' preferences, ultimately having the biggest impact on who they chose to listen to. So I have some direct quotes that I want to read. Um, just highlighting these experiences that people explained. First, we have, yes, since I am a lesbian, I noticed that certain songs that refer to women or really non-men are the ones I lean towards. However, I think it's possible that my sexuality affects my preferences more than my gender identity. A lot of other lesbians I know listen to similar genres and artists to me. I think my gender identity has a little bit of an impact on my musical preferences because I put some effort into finding musicians who are women. I also avoid genres that seem to have more misogyny/discrimination than others, such as country music. This next person says, absolutely. As a non-binary person, finding artists who I can relate to through shared experiences is always a super cool thing. And I find myself listening to and reaching for artists who have lived similar experiences to me. Finally, no. Generally, don't think about it. However, in classical singing, especially choral singing, there are generally treble and low voice parts. Who sings them, I don't particularly care. In fact, in my favorite choral tradition, men frequently are regularly singing the alto or even soprano lines. Alto and soprano lines tend to be traditionally sung by female. Now, there are a couple other responses here that I wanted to read. These are some no answers. No, but I think, sorry, no, but it's not like I have to think about it. There are plenty of straight male artists in all genres, so unlike others, I don't have to go out seeking artists like me. I thought that was an interesting reflection, and it's probably very true. Next is no, I feel I am drawn to music that shares a story and the words of the song with the beat catch me. Often I'm not even able to identify the artist. So this person was definitely attached more to the elements of the music rather than anything about the artist. Yes, I try to follow and support more trans artists, and especially music that speaks if the trans experience, like Cave Town and his song This Is Home. And then finally, no. My dad, being a music teacher, inspired my love of classical music. My mom is a country music fan, and I grew up with it, and pop is just fun. So that is an example of upbringing and how it impacted musical preference. So next I moved on from the idea of gender and opened it up to specific elements of your identity that are not necessarily gender. So I just asked, is there any additional elements that could possibly influence your genre preferences? And here is where I got a bigger response of yes. This was a majority said yes, which is different from the 34% who responded yes about gender. Furthermore, 37%, about 37% said no, and 10% said not sure. Then I asked the same question except for about music artist rather than genre, and the stats here were just about the same, spread out. So we had 47% say yes, 40% say no, and 12% say maybe or not sure. When given a chance to explain their answers to both of these questions, other themes came up besides gender because I was asking about other elements besides gender. And these themes included religion, sexual orientation, upbringing, heritage, and culture, political views, values, race, privilege, aesthetic preferences, and age/generation, which is something I don't believe I didn't even consider, but age is such a big part of what kind of music we listen to. And so when people brought it up, I was thankful for that. Here are some direct quotations that explain each of these points of view. First, we have, I feel that we have implicit bias, and sometimes lyrics or genres that we may not be familiar with cause us to veer away from the music without even realizing it. This person is starting a theme of avoidance, which I've noticed throughout a lot of the responses here. For example, the next one, I am a part of the LGBTQ plus community, so I try to find musicians who are also part of this community or who are supportive and avoid those who are not supportive. So people explain these parts of their identity as not only like gravitating toward, but also avoiding specific people who are against those parts. Um, there's a few more responses here. I won't read through all of them, but feel free to pause and look through them. I did find this one interesting. Grew up in the 60s and marched for the civil rights anti-war, so protest and folk music influenced me in a big way. So just living through experiences in historical times can bring about like important musical pieces for people. Here are a few more responses. Feel free to pause and read them. So I wanted to draw some themes and patterns from the information that I have read. So basically, while some people said yes and some people said no, and some people were unsure about the potential impact that their gender could play on musical preferences, many other elements of an individual's identity were proudly brought up, shared, and reflected upon. And these either came about through themes of avoidance, like, um, let's see here. Sorry. For an example, so for avoidance, um, an individual's morale or political values might cause them to avoid specific lyrical content and music genres, while For another person, their gender identity might cause them to gravitate toward a particular artist. So that's an example of like an avoidance and a gravitation. Okay, and to conclude, the decision to listen to an artist or genre seems to be influenced by a variety of factors related to an individual's identity outside of gender. While only 34% of respondents said that their gender identity impacts their musical preferences, 52% said that a different element of their identity impacts their genre preference, and 47% said that a different element of their identity impacts the artist they gravitate toward. And then finally, I want to share some thoughts for the future and something that I was particularly thankful and excited for during this study. So, my favorite outcome of this project was how these questions made people think deeper about why they listen to the music they listen to. There were several responses that went below the surface level of yes or no, and I just wanted to take a second to read a portion of this survey respondent's answer. They said, "These questions have made me reflect on what kind of music I'm drawn to and why. I want to think that my taste in music has more to do with some intrinsic superior taste of mine or some crap like that. Still, the more I think about it, the more I can see clearly that my taste in music is very obviously influenced by my gender, sex assigned at birth, and that the music I've been drawn to over the years, the music that tells the stories that feel familiar to me, is music by predominantly written women and queer people. Music has always been my safe space. I look to music to reaffirm my feelings, especially when experiencing more negative emotions." Now, this participant went on to share some very personal information and connected some of their traumatic moments from their life to specific songs and pieces of music. For the sake of their privacy, I've opted to keep that portion of their response out of the presentation. However, I just wanted to highlight this part because it makes me happy to know that my question at least got some people thinking and reflecting on this idea of gender identity and music preference intersections. Thank you for taking time to listen to my presentation. I appreciate it, and feel free to email me or comment in the forum if you have any questions about my presentation.